Hi there and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now today we're going to get on with part 2, and to be more specific this will be part 2A. So essentially this video really is sort of dealing with the two main areas where this new upper level of Goodsyard meets the old part of the layout. So as we know, we've now got this higher level, so it's a case of working out how the levels transition between that and the existing baseboard level. So I'm going to tackle one at a time. So the first one on the cards for today is down towards where the entry point is for the track work into the actual Goodsyard area. So I've decided on this area because it is actually really quite complex in many ways, and it's going to need a bit of unique engineering to make everything work. But before I jump into this particular project, I thought I'd actually cover what the whole reason is behind raising the Goodsyard in the first place. Now, as I said way back at the beginning, it was to do with clearance for trains running through on the lower level of track that pretty much runs directly underneath the Goodsyard. So we now have quite a reasonable amount of clearance there, and I would say in terms of the objective of this project, that has been successfully accomplished. So getting back to this area now where we're going to look at the transition between the two different levels. Now, I actually started working on this about 2 weeks ago, so we're going to wind the clock back to where I was at 2 weeks ago. So as I mentioned, for part 2, what I'm actually looking at is how this new upper level of the Goodsyard area is going to transition into this area here. And of course there was some possibility at one point of this being a dockyard, but I shied away from that, and I think one of the other reasons too is because of the track pretty close under here. I think it would actually be quite tricky. So what I've actually done is chopped away a little bit of the upper level of baseboard here, and that is mainly to sort of work in a scene that's going to come in here. Now, I had a bit of a think about the types of buildings or landscape that might be in here, and I decided on just continuing on a little bit of the industrial theme really up to this point, kind of connecting with our engine shed and depot area over there, plus this Goodsyard here, and a little bit of industrial zone in this particular area here. So what's going to happen in here is this is going to be a little coal merchant in here, because what I can do is have some coal saves or whatever they're called in this area here. The street's going to continue on through here. It's going to do a 90-degree turn, and then the street's going to come down through here and then end up disappearing off the baseboard down here. So I wanted to look at a building that would actually fit in this area, being a warehouse of some sort. So I did a bit of research and I found an old warehouse in Oldham, and it is part of a goods yard that used to exist. It's long since gone now. And interestingly, the railway warehouse was still standing until I think about 2012, when it was finally demolished. But I don't know how often it was actually used. I think it might have been used quite a bit, obviously, in its early years, but I think for quite some time it just was left dilapidated and run down. Now, the reason I chose that is because I wanted something that actually ties in with the alignment of the track, so that we've got a bit of a curve. So I've used that warehouse building in Oldham, and I've loosely designed a new building that's similar an appearance to that. So that's going to be positioned in here, and of course what I've done is I've actually just marked out an area with a marker pen to sort of work out where this building would go. And of course there's a bit of a challenge, of course, with different levels of baseboard once again. And once I'd actually marked that area out, I of course photographed that, translated that into the computer, and came back a wee while later with this here, which is essentially just a bit of scrap card with a grid template on it. So this is essentially the footprint of the warehouse, and then from there I was sort of able to sort of look at how this might work and position in against this track. So there may have been at some point possibly the alignment here was different, and this actually would have been a loading area on this side, but what I'm actually doing is this side is actually going to be completely closed off and no longer used. And of course there might be some goods entries on this side for road traffic. So what I've done is worked out this template, included the grid on it so that I can sort of work out some positioning, because I'm going to do two different levels for this building. So at this end there will be a 2-story section, and then the remainder of it will be a 3-story section. So that was that part, and then I was sort of figuring out, well, what am I actually going to do here? So obviously the road or street level is up here, it's got to get to here, and then I sort of thought, well, why not just have the street dropping away and even dropping further and actually dropping below this track level up here. So when I looked at that, I also realized that there was the low relief terraced houses that I had on a stepped sort of slant or incline in this area back around here, and I was able to repurpose that to position in here. So what I've had to do here is actually kind of jimmy up a bit of an unusual framework, which sort of, I guess, is in keeping with the rest of the layout, and have put together this wee contraption here. Now once again, it's a bit of a bizarre shape, or myriad of shapes I should say, and this is the terraced houses that were originally around behind me, and I've managed to position in here and sort of get a more or less similar angle with the street coming down and these buildings. Now I'll describe what's going to happen in this corner here in a minute, but we have the street continuing on down, and then it drops down to a low level, so it's actually below the actual track level here. So once again, it's one of these situations where I've really wanted this as a lift out section, so this will not be permanently fixed to the layout at any point. So I really want to be able to gain access in under here to get to any track work and things like that. So this really is going to be a complete lift out unit when it's complete, and this just sits in place in here. So with a little bit of jiggery and pokery, I've managed to get our flush transition between this area here and then onto this upper level here. And I'm not quite sure whether I'll continue with some further terraced houses that step down as they go down the road level, or whether I just might actually simply go rural from this point on and maybe have some empty sections with overgrown grass and a bit of a hill form here. And then of course we're going to have the hill form coming back up here, and then there will be an embankment that will meet down where the road is going up to the track bed. So you'll get the impression that the road is, for a little brief period, is actually following the alignment of the railway line. So this unusual shape in here, which is very complicated in some respects, and I guess there's quite a number of ways this could have been done, but what I'm planning on doing is this will be just a separate independent wing of this building, and this is just a very quick scrap cardboard mock-up that I've made, and of course it's got an unusual foundational base to it. Now once this building is actually complete, this whole warehouse, of course this part will actually be fixed to here along with the rest of the warehouse. So if we can imagine, for example, the rest of the warehouse is actually going to curve around from there. So the interesting thing is the building of this warehouse, which is completely scratch built and using card and brick, paper, texture material and things like that, is actually a workshop that I'm doing in an upcoming model railway convention here in New Zealand, and so I can't really actually show you any of that at this stage. So that will be compiled into a video after the convention, which is in just under 2 weeks' time. But however, I can actually show you some plans that I've set up on the computer, which sort of give you an idea of how potentially it's going to work, particularly with these sort of two different levels to the building. So this corner here, what I'm planning on actually doing is I'm going to use another one of these corner store kits from Metcalf, and that's mainly so that I can actually sort of get a similar architecture, and that would give the impression that all of these were built at the same time. But what I'm actually going to do to this Metcalf corner store is turn it into low relief. So essentially the back half of the building will actually be cut away, and it will wrap around this corner here, and that hopefully will sort of give the impression, looking from the other side of the layout, from over that way somewhere, that the street of course turns a corner and heads down. So you'll notice some things that I've done here, like for example, this is just a stepped piece of MDF which has been anchored in place and glued in, and that really is assisting with the road bed being nice and rigid. This will eventually become a brick wall which sort of basically locks off this warehouse area in here. So we've moved on a week now from when I first started looking at the footprint for the building on the layout, and I've now actually cut out all the components out of 2mm card. Now this will actually be featured in the workshop, as I mentioned, so I'll be videoing the construction of that next weekend, but it gives you a general idea of all the different components that are involved in putting this building together. And it was a case of laser cutting all of this stuff over a few days last week. So some things I've already assembled to a certain degree. For example, the roof structure on the main building, I've assembled that because I really sort of wanted to make sure it was going to work, and I'll most likely pre-construct the roof section for the two-story section of the building as well. So that's where we're at now for this particular area, and 2B essentially really will be some video footage on the construction of that rather unusual curved warehouse, which will be now located in that area. So as I think I previously mentioned, next weekend here in Christchurch is the National Model Railway Convention, and actually just this weekend gone was the train show as well here in Christchurch at the same time. So we've actually had 2 weekends of model railway exhibitions or conventions, so it's been rather full on. So I thought I'd just leave you with some footage from the train show, which took place just here in Christchurch over the weekend. So I'll sign off for now. Do take care, everyone. Look after yourselves. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.